Before you enjoy this video, why not consider signing up for an account at BACKLINE? Whether you're a player, agent, club or scout, BACKLINE is for you. Create your free profile and connect with those in the industry today. For more information, please visit us at www.packsports.com. That's www.packsports.com. Now please go ahead and enjoy our video presentation. Alright guys, welcome to NextGenRugga. So obviously after a lot of back and forth, we finally have arrived and it is time to determine the all-time South African Schools 15. So if you're new to the channel, please don't forget to click that subscribe button as well as bell notification, and you'll be able to keep updated with all the videos as we release them. So look, this wasn't just a case of me randomly selecting a all-time 15, went through a process. So basically how it started off was that myself and old TIGHTHEAD and a couple of other people basically came up with a list of an all-time South African team of the decade. We started the 70s and 80s, went to 90s, 2000s, and as you know, last year I did a 2010s team of the decade. So obviously there were some back and forth and some disagreements, but I think overall we do agree on that list. And then what we did is we put it to a social media vote. So the first vote was on YouTube channel, and the next vote was on Instagram. So based on that, we took all the information to a panel, and then the panel basically decided on the South African Schools all-time 15. So who was on this panel? Well, obviously myself, representing NextGenRugga, old TIGHTHEAD. I mean, this man knows his rugby, really respect his opinion, so definitely had to be part of the panel. Then there's two agencies that signed up with PACS, F7 Sports Management and a Sportif. Obviously, you know, guys in the agency business know their rugby, so I asked them to select their all-time 15 from the list of players provided, and they duly did so. And there has been another agents that has subsequently signed for PACS, but at that stage these were the only two agencies that were actually willing to work with PACS, even though all the other agencies have been offered. These are the two guys that have taken up the offer, even though it's for free. So we're quite happy to work with these guys, very honored to work with these agencies, these forward-thinking agencies. So had a chat with them and asked them for their opinions. And then obviously last was My Rugby Schools. You can find them on Instagram. The representative from there knows his rugby as well. Very much a historian, so to speak, on Bishop's rugby especially. And he also had his say. So that is it, guys. There is a panel. So I just didn't want to be biased and do things by myself, so I put together this panel. Obviously, it would have been nice to have a few more scouts and a few more agencies on board, but hopefully that'll come with time. But here we are. So let's start with fullbacks, and the nominees were Gerben Grobler, Justin Swart, Henny Daniela, and Jesse Creel for the fullback position. And the winner of this was Jesse Creel, guys, first name on the list. Basically dominated the voting. So the Maritzburg youngsters, the first name on the list. Fullback, Jesse Creel, Maritzburg College. Next was the right wing. So we had Jaco Ranach. You might know his son better, Quibus, the scrum half, but this guy was an absolute beast back in the day. Great college wing. And then JP van der Mesh, an absolute monster from Daniel Pienaar from the 90s. Wynand Willis from Waterkloof and Muller du Plessis from Paul Jim. And the winner, in a pretty close vote, was Muller du Plessis. So that's the second player on the list. You can look at some of Muller's videos online. You can see that he's been training from a young age. I think his father is involved in band training equipment and all the rest of that, which, I mean, explains why Muller is such a beast. Definitely deserves his name on the list, and I think few will argue with that as well. Then we move on to the left wing. So the nominees were Carl du Plessis from Paul Boys, Stephen Brink from Central, Marius Dalport from Swartkop, and Duan van der Merwe from Outeniqua. All fantastic wings, but only one man could take the place on the all-time list. So the left wing is Carl du Plessis from Paul Boys. Absolute legend in the game. You know that a couple of his sons are also fantastic rugby players, trying to make their mark in the world. But Carl is a living legend and thoroughly deserves his name on the list, and probably could go down as one of the best wings in history, not only of South Africa, but of the world. Fantastic player. Then for outside centre, we had Donnie Gerber from Dispatch. Played SA Schools 3 years. Then we have Andre Venter. Played 1 year for Monument, 2 years for Grey College, SA Schools. Another player, fantastic. Then Robert Eberson from Grey College, part of that legendary 2007 team. And then finally Warwick Galan from Otaniqua, part of their golden generation in 2013. This was a very, very tough one for a lot of people to pick. I mean, these are all quality players. But, I mean, at the end of the day, legends win, right? And the winner was obviously a legend, and that is Donnie Gerber. Like I said, it was a close vote, and that just shows you the amount of talent that we had at outside centre in South African schoolboy rugby history. So Donnie Gerber, outside centre, on the all-time list. Next, we have the inside centres. So Halgard Muller from Grey College, Jean de Villiers, Paul Drum, Stefan Watermeyer from Waterkloof, and Jan Serfontein from Grey College as well. Another fantastic group of players, guys, but only one man can enter the list, the Hall of Fame, so to speak, and that is Jean de Villiers from Paul Drum. Obviously a Springbok legend as well, but what a fantastic player he was at school. Apparently a joy to watch, and very, very talented player, and definitely a name that, no doubt anyone would agree deserves to be on this list. Next up, we have the fly halves. So 2 cricket players in Daryl Cullen and Herschel Gibbs, Queens and Bishops respectively. Then we got Derek Hoogaard from Boland Landbou, who just after 1 year of leaving school basically won the Currie Cup single-handedly for the Blue Bulls in 2002 in the final. And then finally Damian Willemse, the Poorus prodigy representing the 2010s generation. And this was one of the tightest. I mean, it was basically a split vote, guys, but ultimately one man won it, and that man was Herschel Gibbs from Bishops. Anyone that saw him play at school level will agree that this guy had all the ingredients to become a Springbok. He chose to become a Protea instead, and had he chosen rugby, we probably never have won the legendary 4-3-8 game either. So, you count some, you win some and you lose some, you know what I mean. Anyway, moving on. So we go to scrum half. So we have Craig Jameson from Maritzburg College, representing the 70s and 80s. First Natal captain to lift the Currie Cup. Then we have Jochie Filun from Framsby, 1994. Absolute beast of a player at school level. Basically carried his team to be one of the top 10 in the country during that era. Paul Dalport, Sax, old boy, absolute legend. Well known in 7 circles as well, but what a player he was at school level. And then finally there's Jaden Hendricks, Glenwood old boy, class of 2018, one of the key players in the Invincible squad. And the winner of the scrum half position for the all-time SA Schools 15 is Jaden Hendricks from Glenwood. And I think if you take a look at how he played at the SA Under-20 World Cup last year, for SA Under-20 and the Under-20 World Cup last year, you'll agree that this guy's just got quality written all over him. And I think everyone will agree it's not a question if he will become a Springbok, merely when he will become a Springbok. Then we move on to our forwards, guys, starting with the 8th men. So obviously Nick Mallet, representing St Andrews College, 70s and 80s. Then Big Joe van Niekerk, I had to keep the picture, love this picture, from Kes, the 90s. Ashley Johnson from the 2000s, and then finally from the 2010s, Rikus Botma from Paul Drum. So I got 2 Paul Drum old boys, a Kes old boy and a St Andrews old boy for the 8th man position. And another close vote here, but ultimately it was Big Joe van Niekerk who took the coveted position at number 8. So Big Joe van Niekerk, all-time South African Schools 8th man. Then moving on to open side flankers. So Jaco Espach, that was from the Pumas region, southeastern Transvaal in those days, was quite a competitor with Francois Pienaar back in those days for the SA School squad. So he played for 2 years, Pienaar for 1. Everyone thought he was going to be the one that made it, but ultimately Pienaar was the one that lifted the World Cup trophy for us. Fantastic player though. Then we got Sean Plaatjes, the first SA Schools captain that was a player of colour. Controversial but absolutely fantastic player, Luke Watson, Grey High School class of 2001. And then finally, Evan Roos, part of the Paul Boys team of 2018. Absolute beast of a player. Really looking forward to seeing how he develops in the future. And the winner of the OPENSIDE flanker all-time SA schools 15 is Evan Roos. And this wasn't a close one, guys. And I can't argue with it too much. I think Evan Roos has got all the weapons to make it all the way to the top. And actually, I don't say it often, I don't say it often, but I think that he has got what it takes to go into the legend category if he carries on the way he is. I really do believe that much in this player. Then for blindside flankers, we had Ruben Kruger from Grey College, Corne Kricher from Paul Boys, Heinrich Brosseau from Grey College, and Jean-Luc Dupré from Kersney College. And this was a tight vote, even though some on the panel felt it shouldn't have been a tight vote, but it was a tight vote, and the title went to Ruben Kruger, and or Krier, So, yeah, I mean, you don't need to say much about this guy. Was an absolute legend of South African rugby, one of the best flankers I've ever seen. And in terms of all-time lists, a lot of the top guys put this guy as one of the all-time flankers, guys. This guy was just absolutely special. Tragically passed away in 2010, but an absolute legend that whose ability and playing days will live on forever in our memories, obviously. Then locks, we had Altus Burger. He was from Ermelo, Bakkies Botha from Vereniging, Alistair Hargreaves from DHS, and finally Salman Murat from Paul Boys. And this was a pretty close vote between two of these players, but one of them ultimately came on top, and that was by a whisker. And that player is Salman Murat from Paul Boys. And what a player he was at school level, guys. 2016, unbeaten, part of the captain of the unbeaten Paul Boys team. Played SA Schools, captain SA under 20. Long track record of leadership and winning. So definitely deserves his place on this list. Then next up we have the number 5 lock, Chet Maheri from Grey College, Hoti Low from Boland Landbou, Flip van der Merwe from Grey College, and finally Ogier Snyman from Muffies. And this wasn't the closest vote. Most of the panel agreed on this, and on the votes as well on Instagram and YouTube, and that was Flip van der Merwe. And I think Flip van der Merwe would have played far more tests for South Africa if it wasn't for Bakkies Botha and Victor Matfield being in front of him. But definitely a legend of schoolboy rugby, and was part of golden era of Grey College rugby, where I think they went over 60 or 70 games unbeaten. So definitely deserves his name on this list. Next up we have Loosehead prop David Theron, well-known coach and old boy of Kimberley Boys, John Smith from Pretoria Boys, Julian Redling-Hayes from Monument, and finally the monster Jan-Hendrik Wessels from Grey College. And this wasn't a close one, and obviously who got my vote personally. The video last year we did of him got over 100,000 views, and that is none other than Jan-Hendrik Wessels from Grey College. What a future this guy is in the game, and very excited to see how he develops. He's got everything, guys. I don't think I've ever seen a prop like this at school level. Absolutely amazing player, and a huge future ahead of him, no doubt about that. Then we move on to TIGHTHEAD props. So we had Tank Lanning from Bishops, Oster Run from Adelaide, Kuni Oosthuizen from Grey College, and Thomas du Toit from Paul Boys. And this was the tightest section of the vote. By far the tightest section of the vote. I mean, these are monsters of schoolboy rugby over here. And just by a whisker, and well-deserved, no doubt about it, someone that has got what it takes to become a Springbok legend, and that is Thomas the Tank, Thomas du Toit, all-time South African schools prop. And then finally we go to hooker, and Sean Gage nominated. Now, as you guys know, when I did the video on Sean Gage, his family got in touch and basically said thanks a lot for mentioning him, and they actually sent me a picture of him, because as you remember, I didn't have a picture of him in the last video. So here's a picture of Sean Gage during his military service. What this guy could have achieved if he had not been tragically killed in 1992, who knows. Actually, one of his nephews is playing for the Rebels right now, Super Rugby, so it shows you that South African genes travel far. So he represented the 70s and 80s DHS Old Boy. For the 90s, it was represented by Peter Dixon from Harrodsburg College. 2000s, Bismarck du Plessis, and then finally the 2010s, Jacques Huisson. And this was a lot tighter than most would think. Now, the first name on everyone's list is one guy, obviously, but Jacques definitely got a big future in the game. Everyone knows it. He's going places, but ultimately, just by a whisker, it was Bismarck du Plessis from Grey College. And he played SA Schools 2 years, 2001 and 2002. His brother Yanni, obviously, as you know, is a Springbok as well. And I mean, Bismarck played a lot of tests for the Springboks, but if it wasn't for John Smith and the captaincy, probably would have played a hell of a lot more. And definitely a legend of school rugby, but that's not to take anything away from Jacques. Maybe we do this list in another 10 years' time and see how Jacques developed, and then people will switch their voting. Who knows what can happen. But as of now, 2020, this was your all-time South African Schools 15. So let me know what your thoughts are, guys. Obviously, this wasn't my own personal list. I consulted a lot of people, got a lot of people involved, got a lot of voting involved. There were over 5,000 votes just on YouTube, over 10,000 votes if you add it all together on Instagram. So that's 15,000 votes there, plus the panel. So, I did this search far and wide, and this is what we came up with, and I'm pretty happy with it. I can't argue with much of it, but I couldn't argue much of any of those guys' names were on the list. They're all fantastic players and all legends in the game of school rugby. So who would you have there instead? Let me know your opinions and thoughts down below. And besides that, have a fantastic week further. Cheers. Bye.